why the government will terminate. We'll talk about in a second. If you're terminated for default, your business reputation and profits may be diminished. For the government, it's a project that has failed to help meet the mission. So they have egg on their face, you have egg on their face if you're terminated for default. Only the CO has the authority to terminate a contract. The contractor does have the right to appeal the termination. If it's a termination for default, they don't have the right to appeal if it's a termination for convenience. Core has to document all the performance monitoring, so all that documentation and all the different ways we talked about monitoring, they have all that in case this happens, because then they can present a rationale as to why they're terminating the company. Preferred method of termination is to effect a no-cost settlement without using formal termination procedures, which can be done if the contractor has not incurred costs for the terminated portion of the contract, the contractor is willing to waive the costs incurred, and no amounts are due to the government under the contract. So a no-cost settlement. So basically the idea is that when you're not performing, then they don't have any reason to pay you for anything that has been out of pocket because you have failed to meet the contractual requirements. In termination for convenience, they're going to be more inclined to help you out with costs because it's their issue that's caused the termination. The government has the right to terminate the entire contract or just portions of the contract, so certain line items they can terminate. They should only terminate what's in the best interest of the government because, again, it's an expensive proposition to go out and get somebody else to perform the work because they have to go through the solicitation cycle here. Termination for convenience is when the government requires the contractor to terminate because of its own need, right? So it's for the convenience of the government. And when they terminate without cause, meaning it's not the contractor's fault, they can the government has the right to give contractor recovery for costs incurred, profit on work done, and the cost of preparing the termination settlement proposal. So you have to put together a proposal with all your costs, and they'll pay for that as well under a T4C. T4C should only be considered in the case when their funds are insufficient to pay the full contract price, meaning like when we're talking about these options, maybe money got taken away from the contract you were working on and put over on a more pressing need. That would be a reason why they get T4C. The requirements no longer needed. The number of products or services has been decreased. They don't need as many as they used to. Or there's been a radical change in the requirement, and now it's beyond the contractor's expertise. So, they asked you to do this, but their requirements change, and now they have to do this, and you just don't have any ability to do this. Termination for default or cause occurs when the contractor fails to perform in accordance with the contract, and there's no other alternative for obtaining performance given the contractor's current policy. So the government doesn't feel the contractor can get there, that the default is so egregious that they just don't feel like the contractor can get there. What default means, it's also used in your commercial contracting. It's basically a failure to discharge a duty. So you were contractually obligated to do something, you don't do it. Cause is a term used in commercial auto contracting that means that which affects a result. So that's why we do this T4C or T4D.
If there is a termination for convenience, is there any negative limitation on your past performance?
And because of the Christian doctrine, that clause has to be written into every government contract. So if you were to get a government contract and you're like, oh, isn't this neat? It doesn't have a T4C clause. It's automatically written in because the government can't work without having this clause in their contract. Wrongful termination for default. So this is when the government terminates you for default, but they were not correct in their assessment of you. So somebody was improperly terminated for default. It can occur when there's an excusable delay or if a proper notice of a possible termination is not given to the contractor. So if there's these extenuating circumstances where, let's say for example, you were supposed to install computer systems in New Orleans, and Hurricane Katrina hit, and the building we were supposed to go into was 3 feet underwater, or filled with water. So that would be an excusable delay. You would not have to perform that work. But let's say you had a contracting officer who said, oh, wait a minute, this is supposed to be done by June 1st, and it's June 30th, and you still haven't put it in yet. We're going to terminate you for default. That would be a wrongful termination for default. So as a result, you should have been able to get a document that said this is an excusable delay, and we'll let you know when to start working again. Instead, the government will only do that part. That's why it's wrongful. Forbearance means withholding a default termination while the government decides whether or not to terminate the contract. So failure to terminate immediately does not waive the government's right to terminate, but it must be done within a reasonable time. So they may, like, okay, you're really bad, but we're going to give you, we told you you're really bad, we're going to give you like 3 months to see whether you get this thing fixed or not. That's a period of forbearance. One thing I will tell you, and again, this is going to make Don's eyes roll, is that the government, to go through this termination for default process is very cumbersome on a contracting officer. Very, very cumbersome. Because you have to go back and get all those files from the Corps. You have to prove that there was a case to be made for why it should be terminated. You have to get it approved by your manager, your contracting officer manager. You have to make sure the technical team's on board with it. How are they going to meet the requirement if you take this company away? Who are their other sources to supply? How can we get them under contract? What's the legal team say? You know, it's all this stuff. You know, are they opening themselves up to any kind of dispute? So lots of different avenues they have to look at. So when I teach this class, we teach classes to contracting officers, I'll say to them, how often do you T for C when you should T for D? Meaning, how many times do you terminate for the convenience of the government when you should be terminating for default? And lots of hands go up. Because in a termination for convenience, the government just says, hey, you know, it's not convenient to have a COBRA anymore. So let's go with, let's just terminate them for the convenience. If in fact they've been performing poorly, they should terminate them for default. It should be like a black mark on their record, and they should bear the consequences of that. Because when they T for C, just like you asked, if is it a bad mark on your record? No, it's the convenience of the government. So some bad contractors stay in the system because it's too much work to terminate them for default. Which I think is, the government should fix that problem. You know, termination for convenience is a relatively straightforward kind of thing. They should be able to do the same thing for termination for default so they can get rid of these bad contractors. Waiver in case of a termination. To waive means to intentionally relinquish a right. So let's say, for example, that you have a job, the government wants a job labor category on your contract for a program manager that has 10 years. If you give them a person with 8 years, you have to ask for a waiver because the government has a right to a person with 10 years. You're only providing a person with 8 years of experience. And in order to grant you that waiver, you have to give them something in exchange. So it could be a reduced price. So this whole idea of waiving rights. If the government does not exercise its right to terminate for default within a reasonable time after the default, it will have waived that right. So this is the case where it goes on for an extended period of time. They've waived their right and the contract goes on as if nothing ever happened. To take advantage of the government waiver, the contractor must show that it was adversely affected by relying on the government's inaction. So here's an example. Like say, let's say you're going to do, you're going to open up facilities, and they're going to be leased facilities, and you open up every 3 months you open up a new one, and the government says we may terminate you for default, but there's that forbearance period where they're still thinking about it. You know, if they delay too long, you have a business decision to make. Should you lease the next building that you're scheduled to lease, or should you wait for the government to figure out this forbearance thing? Because if they terminate you for default, there's no reason to enter into a lease agreement. But on the same token, if you don't enter into the lease agreement, you're not going to meet new contract responsibilities. So that's that's the kind of issues we're trying to resolve here. And then once the government has waived its right to terminate for default, it must establish a new delivery schedule to give you, so that because you've been waiting this time to get back up to speed. Any questions?
So during this point where the contractor's under default, I'm assuming that the CO is talking to the contractor at this point, saying, here's what we got going on. Surely they're in negotiations with one another to try to resolve it. And then for your example, so CO, do I need to go ahead and do this or not? What's your plan? I mean, I'm assuming those kind of conversations are going on, right?
Yeah, they're going on. The problem is, it's not just the CO that's making the termination for default decision. So, they're talking to their legal team, they're talking to the technical team. So while they may be in conversations with you, they may say, I'm not at liberty to say right now. In which case you still have to make up your mind as to what you're going to do. Again, this is not, they don't terminate contracts much. You really have to mess up royally for them to terminate you. And termination for convenience is going to happen. You have no control over that. So, main reason why the government may choose to discontinue or terminate for default is because you fail to perform. Or the other thing they issue you is this cure notice. So they say to you, these are the things that we're finding in your work that's not up to par. And you have 30 days to fix it. So this isn't a surprise, it's Tuesday, let's have a default, kind of thing. This is a gradual process where they're documenting. Typically, you're getting feedback from the core verbally. That's just, because you've established a relationship with them. Hey, Don, you might want to fix this, this, and this because it's not up to snuff. And you're an acute, you're a smart contractor, and you're taking in that information and making the appropriate changes. So you've got that sort of verbal back and forth. And then you've got the cure notice where it's an actual written document saying, get your act together. And then if you choose to ignore that, then that's when they start these default proceedings. The government may need to determine if the contractor's in financial trouble. So part of the reason why contractors don't perform as they're supposed to is maybe they got something major going on in another contract and they've got all the resources going over there. Or maybe they're up for Chapter 11, or maybe they're not paying their bills. Maybe they're not getting money back in time to be able to pay contractors. So what the government has to do is sort of really tune in to what might be happening in the contractor's world that's causing these problems to occur. So, the subcontractors, as we learned in War Dogs, subcontractors weren't getting paid. Subcontractors have a right to go to the government and say, hey, I'm not getting paid. That's a government clue that there's a problem, right? Because they're not getting paid on time. Late deliveries of materials, contractor falling behind schedule, laborers or the job, people that are working on the contract start making complaints. You start hearing things, because people aren't getting paid, they're going to get cranky and they're going to start saying things, so government picks up on that. The government tries calling the contractor to get things resolved and nobody's answering, nobody's responding to emails, there's sloppy performance. Those are all indications that something's running amok. So if you have a non-commercial contract, the government has a right to terminate when its completion is no longer in the government's best interest. So if they have to keep constantly telling you, hey, you need to put green ink in these things, I'm telling you, you need to put green ink, not red ink. If they can just terminate you because, you're becoming more of a burden to them. They'll just go out and get another supplier. The government has the right to terminate without cause and to limit the contractor's recovery in a negotiated settlement. So what they basically want to do is they don't want the contractor to make money as a result of this default, right? So they're not going to pay you anticipated profits. They will pay you for allowable costs and profit that on work you've already done, but the settlement should not compensate the contractor fairly for the work done. The settlement should compensate the contractor fairly. So they'll pay you for what you've done and the costs you've incurred, but they're not going to pay you for the anticipated stuff. A T for C in non-commercial contracts can be imposed at any time when the termination is in the best interest of the government. It does give the flexibility to the government. It's a right that they have, so it's written in every contract. You don't have to have there's no fault or negligence on your part when they issue a T for C. It could be partial or total. Termination for default occurs in a non-commercial contract when you fail to provide the supplies or services within the time specified in the contract. Or you fail to make progress, you're not meeting your milestones, or you fail to perform any other contractual provisions. So typical stuff that you would expect to see. Do you guys have your termination for default clauses in your commercial contracts, correct? So sort of if the customer doesn't do certain things, like if they stop paying you progress payments, you stop doing work for them, right? There's not gonna. Commercial contract termination, so this is for what most of you will be doing, or a lot of you will be doing. They can be terminated for cause or for convenience. If it's terminated for convenience, the government has to pay a percent of the contract price reflecting the percent of the work performed prior to termination. So again, they'll pay for what you've done. Any cost that the contractor can demonstrate resulted from the termination. So we talked about leases yesterday, and if you terminate, you just took on a 3-year contract, a three-year lease, and the contract government terminates after year 1, then you go ahead and you still have to pay costs to get out of that lease, so they'll pay for those. The government will not pay for any work or costs incurred that the contractor reasonably could avoid it. So if the contractor says, hey, I know they've issued a cure notice and you go out and start a brand new lease for something, you probably aren't going to pay that because you should have known that they were starting termination proceedings at that point. These are the kind of questions, I'll just let you read them, that the government asks with regard to default or cause.
No, you're
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
What they're really looking for is, are you doing things that are negligent? Are you doing things that aren't meeting contractual requirements? Any questions about any of this?
But it really seems like that the government should just tell you to just, they don't need you no more convenience and with no real cause to let you go.
Yeah, so in termination for convenience, they really try not to exercise that at all.
Because sometimes, there's somebody else they'd like to put in that place or personality conflict. I guess I'm saying that because in the mining world, you deal with the government agency on a daily basis. And this one person could come and see what they see out their eyeballs. Ain't no comparison to the other guy that comes and sees. And then it gets to the point that they get to show their authority, And some people would have the authority to really damage a business person, especially if you put a lot of heart and everything in it to get to do what you want to do to where you have no fault, but yet they come and throw you under the bus. Somehow.
Have you had that situation? Have you had that situation?
Have
you had that situation?
Oh, many times. Not in sales or anything, just with the mining industry regulated by the government, and they have their rules and things. And basically tell you it's your plan, but they determine what's in that plan.
Yeah, to be honest with you, that surprises me. Like, I can see if it's like a commercial company deciding, okay, you're out today, but that's governed by the UCC, so that should protect both sides equally. The government really tries not, like, if I came in and I had a personality conflict with you, what I would do as the government is talk to your contracting officer and say, I can't get along with Jeff, And usually that's enough for the contracting officer of your company to say, oh, let's figure out maybe we should bring somebody else in instead of Jeff. So like, they're